"I just want to see my balance," she said. The millionaire laughed. Until he looked at the screen. A 12-year-old girl walks into the most exclusive bank in downtown Manhattan, clutching nothing but a worn piece of paper and a backpack that's seen better days. Her name is Zuriella Lewis, and she's about to turn the life of a billionaire completely upside down with just 5 simple words. Welcome to Black Courageous Stories, a home for our voices, our strength, and our truth. Tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe if you stand with justice, dignity, and humanity. Only those who support prejudice will not subscribe to this channel. The marble floors gleam under crystal chandeliers as Zuriella approaches the counter. Her clothes are clean but clearly secondhand. Her sneakers have holes in them, and her hair's pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looks exactly like what she is, a homeless child who's been sleeping in shelters for weeks. But here's what nobody in that bank knows yet. Zuriella is about to become the richest person in that room. She steps up to the counter where Margaret, a bank teller with 20 years of experience, immediately looks annoyed. Behind Zuriella, a line of wealthy customers begins to form, and at the back of that line stands Charles Benton, a real estate mogul worth over $2 billion who's never met a person he couldn't look down on. Zuriella's voice is soft but steady as she speaks. "I just want to see my balance." The reaction is immediate. Margaret's eyebrows shoot up and she lets out a condescending laugh. "Sweetheart," she says, loud enough for everyone to hear, "this isn't a charity. We don't have kids' accounts here." But it's Charles Benton's reaction that really sets the tone. This man, who owns half the buildings on this street, bursts into such loud laughter that every head in the bank turns. His voice booms across the marble lobby. "Kids like you don't have accounts here, little girl. Someone get her a snack, not a bank slip." The other customers begin to chuckle. A woman in designer clothes whispers to her companion, "How did security even let her in?" An elderly man in a 3-piece suit shakes his head and mutters, "What is this world coming to?" But here's what stops everyone cold. Zuriella doesn't cry. She doesn't run. She doesn't even flinch. Instead, she looks Charles Benton directly in the eyes with a maturity that seems impossible for someone her age, and she says calmly, "You should not assume." For just a moment, Charles freezes. There's something in her voice, something in her eyes that doesn't match what he expected. It's like she knows something he doesn't, like she's holding a secret that could change everything. And she is. Margaret tries to shoo her away. "Look, honey, maybe you're confused. This is First National Private Banking. We handle million-dollar accounts. You probably want the regular branch down the street." Zuriella shakes her head and unfolds the piece of paper in her hand. It's been folded and refolded so many times that the creases are permanent. "My mother told me to come here. She gave me this number." Charles steps closer, his curiosity overriding his cruelty for just a moment. "What number, kid? Your lunch money account?" More laughter from the crowd. But Zuriella just stares at him with those impossibly calm eyes and says, "You'll see. Don't go anywhere. If you think you know where this story is heading, trust me, you have no idea what's about to happen. Make sure you're subscribed because this is just the beginning of the most incredible twist you'll ever hear." What do you think Zuriella has written on that piece of paper? To understand what happens next, you need to know who Zuriella really is. And to know that, we need to go back 18 months to a small apartment in Brooklyn where love lived alongside struggle, where a brilliant woman named Solange Lewis was fighting the battle of her life. Solange Lewis wasn't just Zuriella's mother. She was her everything, a software engineer who'd worked her way through college while raising a baby. Solange had dreams bigger than their tiny one-bedroom apartment. She had warm brown eyes that crinkled when she smiled, hands that were always gentle, and a mind that could solve problems other people couldn't even understand. But 18 months ago, those gentle hands started shaking. Those brilliant eyes started looking tired. And when Solange finally went to the doctor, the word that came back changed everything. Cancer. Breast cancer, stage 3, aggressive and unforgiving. I want you to picture Solange on her worst days, bald from chemotherapy, weak from treatments, but still sitting at her kitchen table with Zuriella every night, helping with homework, still braiding her daughter's hair even when her hands trembled, still whispering, "I love you, baby girl," every single night before bed. Because here's what Solange knew that the doctors didn't. She wasn't just fighting for her own life. She was fighting to secure her daughter's future. You see, Zuriela's father, Marcus, had been a quiet genius, a software developer who'd created algorithms that became the backbone of 3 major tech companies. When he died in a car accident when Zuriela was just 7, those companies were legally required to continue paying royalties to his estate. Royalties that, over 5 years, had grown into something substantial. But Solange was smarter than that. She took those royalty payments and made investments that most people had never even heard of. Cryptocurrency in its early days, startup companies that seemed like long shots, tech stocks that everyone said were overvalued, and then there were the insurance policies. Marcus had been paranoid about providing for his family, so he'd taken out multiple life insurance policies through different companies. When he died, those policies paid out over $4 million. Money that Solange never touched, never spent, never even told anyone about. Instead, she put it all into a trust fund. Picture Solange during those last months, sitting in lawyers' offices with her headscarf wrapped tight, signing document after document. The lawyer, a kind man named David Chen, keeps asking if she's sure about the structure she wants. "Mrs. Lewis," he says gently, "this is a very sophisticated trust. The growth potential is enormous, but it also means your daughter won't be able to access the principal until she's 25. Are you sure you don't want to leave her something she can use right away?" Solange's voice is weak but determined. "She needs to be protected, Mr. Chen, not just financially, but from people who might try to take advantage of her. This trust will grow. By the time she's old enough to understand what she has, it'll be enough to change her life completely." Mr. Chen nods and makes a note. "And the management of the trust until she comes of age?" "I'll designate her aunt as temporary guardian, but the trust itself will be managed by your firm. Zuriela will be able to check her balance when she needs to, but no one else can touch the money. Not until she's ready." What Solange doesn't know, what she can't know, is that her sister Renee is already making plans that have nothing to do with Zuriela's well-being. The final months are brutal. Solange gets weaker and weaker, but every day she spends time with Zuriela, teaching her things that seem strange for a mother to teach an 11-year-old. "Baby girl," Solange says one afternoon, braiding Zuriela's hair with hands that shake more each day, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your daddy and I, we built something for you. Something that will protect you when I can't anymore." Zuriela leans back against her mother's legs, feeling safe in the way that only children can. "What do you mean, Mama?" "There's going to be an account, baby, a bank account with your name on it. And when you're ready, when you really need it, you can go check your balance." She pulls out a piece of paper and writes down a series of numbers. "This is your account number. I'm putting it in your backpack, in the little pocket. Don't take it out unless you absolutely have to, okay?" Zuriela nods, not really understanding but trusting her mother completely. "And baby girl? No matter what anyone tells you, no matter how they look at you or what they say about you, remember that you are loved, remember that you are provided for, and never, ever let anyone make you feel small." 3 weeks later, Solange Lewis takes her last breath in a hospital room that smells like disinfectant and broken dreams. But her last words are a whisper in Zuriela's ear. "Check your balance, baby girl. When you're ready, check your balance." At the funeral, Aunt Renee cries louder than anyone. She holds Zuriela close and promises, "I'm going to take such good care of you, baby. Your mama would want that." But within a week of taking Zuriela home, Renee's true colors start to show. She goes through Solange's apartment like a hurricane, selling everything she can get her hands on. The furniture, the electronics, even Solange's jewelry. Everything goes to the highest bidder. "The world won't do nothing for black girls like you," Renee tells Zuriela one evening as she counts the money from selling Solange's wedding ring. "So you better toughen up. You better learn to expect nothing from nobody." When Zuriela asks about her mother's things, about the photo albums and the books, Renee just shrugs. "Sold 'em. We need the money more than we need memories." And then, 6 weeks after Solange's death, comes the final betrayal. "Pack your stuff," Renee says on a Tuesday morning. "You can't stay here anymore." Zuriela, who's been trying so hard to be good, to be quiet, to not cause any trouble, finally speaks up. "Where am I going to go? I'm 11. Renee's face hardens. "That's not my problem anymore. I did my duty by your mama, but I got my own life to live. I got bills to pay." What Renee doesn't know is that there's a trust worth millions sitting in Zuriella's name. What she doesn't know is that if she'd just waited, if she'd just cared enough to talk to Solange's lawyer, she could have been compensated handsomely for being Zuriella's guardian. But Renee never makes that call. She never asks about Solange's affairs. She just assumes that her sister died broke and left her with a burden. So that night, Zuriella Lewis walks out into the world with nothing but her backpack, her mother's folded paper, and a quiet determination that most adults twice her age don't possess. She spends 3 weeks in shelters, 3 weeks learning how cruel the world can be to a child, with no one to protect her. But every night, she takes out that piece of paper and remembers her mother's words. "Check your balance, baby girl." And finally, on a Tuesday morning in October, she works up the courage to walk into First National Private Banking and ask for exactly that. What Zuriella doesn't realize is that she's about to expose not just her own secret, but the ugly truth about how society treats people based on assumptions. Stay tuned, because the next part will leave you speechless. Have you ever been judged based on your appearance? Let me know in the comments. Back in that gleaming bank lobby, the mockery is reaching a fever pitch. Charles Benton is practically holding court now, using Zuriella as entertainment for the other wealthy customers who've gathered around like spectators at a cruel show. "Tell you what, kid," Charles says, his voice dripping with condescension. "If you really have an account here, I'll personally apologize and give you $100 for your trouble. But when it turns out you're just confused," he spreads his hands wide, "well, maybe next time you'll think twice before wasting everyone's time." The crowd murmurs its approval. Someone in the back calls out, "Maybe she thinks she has a piggy bank here." Another voice adds, "Does she even have a home?" But here's what's getting under their skin, even though they don't realize it yet. Zuriella isn't reacting the way they expect. She's not crying. She's not angry. She's not even defensive. She's just waiting. Like someone who knows the truth has a way of speaking for itself. "I just need to check what my parents left," she says quietly, and something in those words, the calm certainty of them, creates a moment of uncomfortable silence. Margaret the teller is getting frustrated now. This situation should have been resolved 10 minutes ago, but something about this kid's confidence is making her second-guess herself. "Look," she says, "even if you have some kind of account, it would be a minor savings account. Those are handled at the regular branch." But Zuriella shakes her head. "My mother said to come here. She said to use this number." She unfolds the paper again, and for the first time, Margaret gets a good look at what's written on it. The number is longer than a typical account number, much longer. It has the prefix that Margaret recognizes but hopes she's wrong about. That's a trust account number," Margaret says quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. Charles, who's been enjoying himself immensely, doesn't hear the change in Margaret's tone. "What's a trust account number? Come on, Margaret, just run whatever numbers she's got and let's end this charade." Margaret's hands are actually shaking a little as she types the numbers into her computer. Trust accounts at this level aren't something she deals with every day. They're usually handled by the private banking division upstairs, by people with titles like wealth management specialist and fiduciary advisor. "The system is asking for additional verification," Margaret says, her voice smaller now. "Additional verification for what?" Charles demands. For high-value estate access." The phrase hangs in the air like smoke. High-value estate access. Even Charles, for all his wealth, knows that phrase. It means serious money, old money, the kind of money that comes with legal protections and oversight. For the first time since this whole scene began, the lobby gets quiet. Margaret types in more codes, following prompts that she's only seen a handful of times in her career. The system is asking for biometric verification now, fingerprint scanning for anyone under 18 who wants to access a restricted estate account. "I need you to put your finger here," Margaret says, her tone completely different now, professional, maybe even a little nervous. Zuriella steps forward and places her small finger on the scanner. The machine beeps, processes, And then something happens that makes Margaret's face go completely pale. The entire computer system shifts. The regular banking interface disappears and is replaced by something that looks like it belongs in a different century. All dark wood backgrounds and gold lettering. At the top of the screen, in elegant script, are the words, "Fiduciary Trust Services, Restricted Access." "Oh my God," Margaret whispers. Charles pushes forward, his earlier amusement fading into something that might be concern. "What? What's happening?" But Margaret can't answer because she's staring at a screen that's asking her to confirm whether she wants to proceed with balance inquiry for a Level 5 protected estate account. She's been working at this bank for 20 years, and she's never even heard of a Level 5 protected estate account. Let me take you back 8 months to a conference room in this very building where Solange Lewis sat across from David Chen and 3 bank executives signing the papers that would create Zuriela's trust. "Mrs. Lewis," the senior bank executive had said, "the structure you're requesting is unusual. Most parents set up education funds or simple inheritance trusts. What you're creating is more like what we designed for a tech billionaire or a Hollywood dynasty." Solange, wearing her favorite headscarf, because the chemo had taken her hair months ago, nodded calmly. "My daughter's going to need protection, not just money. I want this trust structured so that no one can take advantage of her, but also so that she can access verification of the funds if she's ever in a situation where she needs to prove her worth. The growth projections on these investments are quite aggressive," another executive pointed out. "If even half of these perform as expected, your daughter will be worth—" "I know exactly what she'll be worth," Solange interrupted gently. "I've done the calculations. By the time she's 18, she should never have to worry about money again. By the time she's 25 and gets full access, she should be able to change the world if she wants to." The executives exchanged glances. This wasn't some grieving mother making emotional decisions. This was a brilliant woman who understood compound interest and market dynamics better than most of their wealth management clients. "And the protection protocols?" David Chen asked. "Maximum security. Biometric access only. No one else gets to see the balance except Zuriela herself. If anyone tries to challenge the trust or claim guardianship for financial gain, they get automatically disqualified." "Mrs. Lewis," the senior executive said carefully, "what you're describing is the kind of protection we usually reserve for clients with assets in the 8-figure range." Solange smiled, and for just a moment, she looked like the healthy, brilliant woman she'd been before cancer changed everything. "Then, you understand why I need it." Back in the lobby, Margaret is still staring at the screen. "The system has accepted Zuriela's biometric data and is now asking for final confirmation. Display account balance for Zuriella Solange Lewis, protected beneficiary." The whole bank has gone quiet now. Even Charles has stopped talking because something about the gravity of what's happening is finally penetrating his arrogance. "Display it," Zuriela says quietly. "Please." Margaret looks around the room, suddenly aware that whatever's about to happen should probably happen in private, but it's too late for that now. The crowd has gathered. Charles is standing right behind her, and everyone is waiting. She clicks, "Yes." For a moment, the screen goes blank. Then, line by line, information begins to appear. Zuriella Solange. Lewis protected estate beneficiary account status. Active growth rate, 847% over 18 months. Current balance, calculating. And then, in numbers so large they barely fit on the screen, $68,127,493 antadireven. The silence in that lobby isn't just quiet. It's the kind of absolute stillness that comes when the entire world shifts on its axis. Charles Benton, billionaire real estate mogul, has never been speechless in his life. But he's speechless now, staring at a number that's bigger than some of his own quarterly profits. The woman in designer clothes who was making jokes 5 minutes ago is now backing away like she's been caught stealing. The elderly man in the 3-piece suit is actually removing his hat like he's in the presence of royalty. And Margaret? Margaret is frantically looking around for her manager because she's just realized that she's been treating one of the bank's most valuable clients like a homeless child. But the person I want you to focus on is Zuriela. Because while everyone else in that room is dealing with shock and horror and disbelief, she just nods slightly, like this is exactly what she expected, like her mother told her it would be there. "Thank you," she says politely to Margaret. "That's all I needed to see." And then she starts to turn away, as if she's just going to leave with the entire bank lobby in chaos behind her. But Charles Benton, who's built his fortune on never letting an opportunity slip away, suddenly realizes the magnitude of what he's just done. He's just publicly humiliated someone who could buy and sell him twice over. Someone who's 12 years old and has no parents to protect her, and might very well remember this moment for the rest of her very wealthy life. His voice cracks as he speaks. "Wait. Please wait. You think you've seen everything? Trust me, what happens next is going to blow your mind. The real drama is just starting. Make sure you're subscribed because this story gets even more unbelievable. What do you think Charles is going to do now that he realizes his mistake? What happens next unfolds like a movie where someone hits the slow motion button. Every movement, every breath, every heartbeat seems stretched out as the full weight of the situation crashes down on everyone in that marble lobby. Charles Benton's face has gone from red with laughter to white with horror. His hands, which were gesturing dismissively just moments before, are now shaking. Because Charles didn't get to be a billionaire by being stupid, and he's smart enough to understand exactly what kind of trouble he's just walked into. $68 million, he whispers, more to himself than anyone else. She has $68 million. But here's what makes this moment even more devastating. The system is still displaying information. Because a Level 5 protected estate account doesn't just show a balance, it shows a complete financial profile. And that profile is painting a picture that's making everyone in the bank realize they didn't just mock a rich kid. They mocked an orphan who's richer than most corporations. The screen shows orphaned, father deceased 2018, mother deceased 2023. Guardian status, currently unassigned housing status, temporary transitional estate protections, maximum security-enabled legal representatives, Chen and Associates Fiduciary Services. She's an orphan, Margaret breathes, her voice barely audible. She's been living in shelters. And suddenly, every cruel word, every dismissive laugh, every assumption they made hits differently. This isn't just about money. This is about a child who lost everything and has been surviving on the streets while sitting on a fortune that could solve every problem she's ever had. But here's where the story gets even more heartbreaking. Zuriella still doesn't fully understand what any of this means. She knows the number is big, but she's never had context for how big. She's been focused on just surviving day to day, on finding places to sleep and food to eat. The idea that she's been wealthy this entire time, wealthy enough to buy houses and cars and security, hasn't even occurred to her. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Charles asks, and for the first time in this entire encounter, his voice is gentle. "Why didn't you get help?" Zuriella looks at him with those calm eyes that have seen too much for someone her age. "My mother said the account would protect me. She didn't say it would protect me from being hungry." The words hit the room like a physical blow. Because what Zuriella is telling them, without even realizing it, is that she's been homeless and starving while having access to enough money to live like a princess for the rest of her life. She just didn't know how to access it. Margaret's manager, a woman named Susan, who's been called down from the executive floor, arrives just in time to see the account information on the screen. Her reaction is immediate and professional. "Clear the lobby," she says sharply. "Everyone who doesn't work here out now." But Charles doesn't move. He can't move. Because he's starting to understand something that's making his stomach turn. Zuriella didn't come here to embarrass him. She didn't come here to prove a point or get revenge on classist assumptions. She came here because she's been living on the streets for weeks, and she probably thought that if she could just see her balance, if she could just confirm that her mother's promise was real, maybe she could figure out how to use it to get help. "You don't know how to access the money, do you?" he asked quietly. Zuriella shakes her head. "My mother said I could check my balance. She never said anything about taking money out." Susan, who's dealt with estate accounts before, steps forward. "That's because the trust is structured to protect you, sweetheart. The money is yours, but there are safeguards in place. You can't just walk up to an ATM with this kind of account." She's already on her phone, calling the number displayed on the screen for Chen and Associates. Because what everyone in this room is realizing is that they've stumbled into something much bigger than a banking transaction. They've stumbled into a child welfare crisis involving one of their most valuable clients. But while Susan is making calls and Margaret is trying to process what just happened, Charles Benton is going through his own personal crisis. Because he's remembering every word he said, every laugh he shared, every assumption he made. And he's realizing that his cruelty wasn't just wrong. It was directed at someone who's been through more tragedy in 12 years than he's experienced in 60. "I'm so sorry," he whispers, and for the first time in decades, Charles Benton actually means an apology. "I am so sorry." But Zuriella just looks at him with that impossible calm and says, "You should not assume." Those same 4 words she said before, but now they carry the weight of $68 million behind them. The call to David Chen lasts exactly 3 minutes. 3 minutes for Susan to explain the situation, and 3 minutes for David Chen to shift from polite professionalism to controlled panic. "Is she safe?" is his first question. "Is the child currently safe?" "She's here at the bank," Susan says. "She appears to be unharmed, but she's been living in shelters. Her designated guardian appears to have abandoned her. I'm coming there immediately. Do not let her leave. And for the love of God, treat her like the VIP client she is." When Susan hangs up, she turns to Zuriella with a completely different demeanor. "Sweetheart, I need you to know that you're going to be taken care of now. Your mother set up protections for you that are just starting to kick in." But here's what's beautiful about Zuriella in this moment. Even surrounded by apologies and sudden respect and promises of help, she hasn't changed. She's still the same calm, dignified child who walked in asking for one simple thing. "I just wanted to see my balance," she says quietly. "My mother told me it would be there." And Charles Benton, standing in the wreckage of his own assumptions, realizes that he's just witnessed something extraordinary. Not just wealth revealing itself, but grace under pressure from someone who had every right to be bitter and angry and cruel in return. Instead, she's teaching him a lesson he'll never forget. The most powerful people in the world aren't always the ones who look the part. "Can I?" Charles starts, then stops, unsure if he even has the right to ask. "Can I do something to help? I know I don't deserve to, but is there anything—" Zuriella considers this for a moment, then says something that will haunt Charles Benton for the rest of his life. "My mother told me that kindness is the only thing worth being rich for. Maybe you could try being kind to the next person who doesn't look like they belong." The words are simple, but they land with the force of revelation. Because in one sentence, this 12-year-old has just articulated something that Charles has spent 60 years failing to understand. Wealth means nothing if you don't use it to lift people up. This is getting intense, isn't it? But we're not done yet. What happens next will restore your faith in justice. Don't forget to subscribe, because the conclusion of this story will leave you speechless. What would you do if you were in Charles's position right now? David Chen arrives at First National Private Banking in a black sedan with 2 associates, and the kind of urgency that comes when a multi-million-dollar client has been failed by the system designed to protect her. He's not just a lawyer. He's a fiduciary specialist who handles estates for tech entrepreneurs and entertainment moguls, people whose wealth needs to be protected from fortune hunters and family members with bad intentions. But in all his years of practice, he's never had to deal with a client who's been living on the streets while her trust account grew to astronomical proportions. The elevator to the executive floor has never moved so slowly. When David walks into the lobby, still cleared of regular customers, his first instinct is to find Zuriella. But what stops him cold is the scene he encounters. This tiny girl sitting calmly in a chair that's too big for her, surrounded by bank executives who look like they're attending a funeral, and one very wealthy man who appears to be having some kind of emotional breakdown. "Zuriella?" David's voice is gentle. He's met her before, at her mother's funeral, but that was months ago, and she was barely holding herself together then. Now she looks up at him with recognition and something that might be relief. "Mr. Chen," she says politely, "I checked my balance like Mama said I could." Those words, so simple, so trusting, hit David like a physical blow. Because what she's telling him is that she's been homeless and hungry for weeks, but she still followed her mother's instructions exactly. She didn't try to figure out how to access the money. She didn't demand help. She just did exactly what Solange told her to do. "Oh, sweetheart," David says, kneeling down to her level, "I'm so sorry. This should never have happened to you." But Charles Benton, who's been silent since his apology, suddenly finds his voice. "The failure here isn't just systemic," he says, his voice rough with emotion. "It's personal. I saw a homeless child and I decided she was worth mocking. I saw someone asking for help and I turned it into entertainment." David looks at Charles for the first time. Taking in the expensive suit and the obvious wealth and the way this man is looking at Zuriella like she's broken something inside him. "And you are?" David asks, though his tone suggests he's not particularly interested in the answer. "Charles Benton. And I owe this child more than an apology." What happens next is a masterclass in how power really works. Because David Chen doesn't just represent Zuriella's money, he represents her interests. And right now, her interests include making sure that the people who failed her understand the magnitude of their failure. "Mr. Benton," David says, his voice carrying the kind of authority that comes from managing billion-dollar estates, "what exactly did you say to my client?" Charles's face crumbles. He looks around the lobby at all the witnesses and then back at Zuriella. And when he speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper. "I told her she didn't belong here. I told her kids like her don't have accounts at banks like this. I made jokes about getting her a snack instead of a bank slip. I laughed at her." David's expression doesn't change, but everyone in the room can feel the temperature drop. "You mocked a protected minor estate owner. You attempted to exclude a client whose account represents more value than this entire branch handles in 6 months. You turned a child's attempt to access her legal inheritance into public humiliation." Each word is delivered with surgical precision, and Charles is shrinking with every sentence. "Mr. Chen," Susan interjects, trying to maintain some damage control, "we're prepared to make this right. We're reviewing our training protocols and will ensure—" But David holds up a hand. "Ms. Peterson, isn't it? Let me be very clear about something. This isn't a customer service failure that gets resolved with an apology and some policy changes. This is a breach of fiduciary duty toward a protected minor. This is exactly the kind of situation Mrs. Lewis structured this trust to prevent." He pulls out a folder that he's been carrying and sets it on the counter. "These are the legal protections built into Zuriella's trust. Any institution or individual that discriminates against her or fails to provide appropriate service faces immediate review and potential legal action. Any person in a position of authority who treats her poorly can be held personally liable." The silence in the room is deafening. "Mr. Benton," David continues, turning back to Charles, "you publicly humiliated a child based on her appearance and assumed socioeconomic status. You used your own wealth and position to make her feel small, in front of witnesses." Charles is sweating now, but not because he's afraid of legal consequences. He's sweating because he's finally understanding the full weight of his actions. This wasn't just cruelty. It was cruelty directed at someone who's already lost everything and was just trying to survive. "What can I do?" Charles asks, and the desperation in his voice is real. "How can I make this right?" David looks at Zuriella, who's been listening to this entire exchange with the same calm attention she's shown throughout this whole ordeal. "Zuriella, Mr. Benton is asking how he can make amends for his behavior. What would you like to tell him?" And this is where Zuriella does something that stops everyone's heart. She stands up from her chair and walks over to Charles Benton. This tiny girl approaching this powerful man who just spent 20 minutes destroying her dignity. Everyone in the room holds their breath. "Mr. Benton," she says, looking up at him, "my mother told me that hurt people, and that healing people heal people. You hurt me because something in you is hurting. But I don't want to hurt you back." Charles actually starts crying. This billionaire, this man who's built his fortune on being harder and smarter and more ruthless than everyone else, is standing in a bank lobby crying because a 12-year-old just offered him forgiveness he doesn't deserve. "But," Zuriella continues, "I would like you to remember how this felt. And maybe next time someone doesn't look like they belong somewhere, maybe you could help them instead of hurting them." The words hang in the air like a benediction. Because what Zuriella has just done is demonstrate something that all the money in the world can't buy: wisdom. True, deep generational wisdom that comes from understanding pain and choosing grace anyway. Charles drops to his knees so he's at eye level with her. "I promise you," he says through his tears, "I will never forget this, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the grace you just showed me." And Zuriella, this incredible child who's been homeless and hungry and alone for weeks, just nods. Like forgiveness is the most natural thing in the world. Are you crying yet? Because I am. This story isn't over. The final chapter will show you what justice really looks like. Stay with me to the end and don't forget to subscribe. How do you think this story should end? 6 months later, if you walked into First National Private Banking, you'd see some changes. There's a new training program for all staff about unconscious bias and treating every customer with dignity regardless of their appearance. There's a new protocol for handling minor estate accounts that ensures children are never left without advocacy. And there's a small plaque near the entrance that reads, "Every person who walks through these doors deserves respect." Charles Benton requested that plaque. He also requested something else. He asked David Chen if he could set up a foundation in Zuriella's honor, not using her money, but using his own. A foundation that provides emergency housing and legal advocacy for orphan children who might be lost in the system. He calls it the Zuriella Lewis Foundation, and every year on the anniversary of that day in the bank, he sends Zuriella a letter telling her about the children it's helped. But let me tell you what happened to Zuriella herself. David Chen moved quickly to establish proper guardianship through a vetted family services organization that specializes in managing the care of high net worth minors. Zuriella now lives in a beautiful home with Sarah and Michael Rodriguez, a couple who've spent 15 years providing homes for children who need specialized care. They're not just guardians, they're family. The house has a library where Zuriella can read as much as she wants. It has a garden where she grows vegetables like her mother taught her, and it has a room filled with photos of Solange because Sarah understood that keeping her mother's memory alive was just as important as keeping her body safe. Zuriella still goes to school like any other kid. She still does homework and chores and complains about having to clean a room. But there's something different about her now, a confidence that comes from knowing she's protected, knowing she's loved, and knowing that she survived the worst thing that could happen to her and came out stronger. The trust account continues to grow. By conservative estimates, Zuriella will be worth over $200 million by the time she gets full access to her inheritance at 25. But more importantly, she's learning how to use wealth responsibly. She's studying the foundation Charles built, learning about the children it helps. She's asking David questions about investing and philanthropy and how to make money work for good in the world. Because here's what Zuriella Lewis understood when she structured that trust. She wasn't just giving her daughter money. She was giving her options. The option to never worry about basic survival again. The option to pursue any dream, any education, any path she chooses. The option to help other people in ways that most people can only imagine. But the most important thing Solange gave her daughter wasn't financial at all. It was a foundation of love so strong that it could carry her through the darkest moments of her life and teach her to respond to cruelty with grace. 6 months after that day in the bank, Zuriella keeps her mother's original note in a frame by her bed. The numbers are smudged now, worn from being folded and refolded so many times. But next to it is something new, a letter from her mother that David discovered in Solange's papers, marked, "To be given to Zuriella when she finds her strength." The letter is simple. "My beautiful daughter, if you're reading this, it means you've learned the first lesson about wealth. It's not about the money. It's about the power to choose kindness when the world chooses cruelty. It's about the strength to stand up for yourself and others. It's about using what you have to make the world a little bit better than you found it. You are rich, baby girl. Not because of the numbers in that account, but because of the love in your heart. Use both wisely. All my love, Mama." And here's what I love most about this story. It doesn't end with Zuriella getting revenge on the people who hurt her. It doesn't end with public humiliation or legal battles or dramatic confrontations. It ends with a 12-year-old girl teaching grown adults what it means to be truly wealthy. Because real wealth isn't about how much money you have. It's about how much love you can give, how much grace you can show, how much kindness you can spread in a world that often chooses cruelty instead. Zuriella learned that lesson from her mother, and now she's teaching it to the world. Margaret still works at the bank, but she volunteers at the Zuriella Lewis Foundation on weekends. Susan implemented new policies that have become a model for financial institutions across the country. And Charles Benton? Charles became a different person entirely. He still runs his real estate empire, but now he runs it with the understanding that every person he meets might be carrying invisible burdens, invisible strength, invisible worth that can't be measured by appearance. The last time I checked, the foundation Charles built in Solange's honor has helped over 300 children find safe homes and legal advocacy. 300 kids who might otherwise have fallen through the cracks, just like Zuriella almost did. And sometimes, when Charles visits the foundation offices, he still carries in his wallet a small card with 5 words written on it. You should not assume. A reminder from a 12-year-old girl who taught him that the most important lessons in life often come from the people you least expect to teach them. Zuriella Lewis walked into that bank as a homeless orphan and walked out as one of the richest children in America. But more importantly, she walked in as someone the world had overlooked and walked out having reminded everyone in that room what it means to be human. Her mother's final gift wasn't just financial security. It was the lesson that true wealth comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. And that's a lesson worth more than all the money in the world. Thank you for staying with me through this incredible journey. If this story moved you, if it changed how you think about making assumptions about people, if it reminded you that kindness costs nothing but means everything, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove the world is still full of miracles, even when they come in unexpected packages. What's the most important lesson you'll take from Zuriella's story?